The cost of renting in Dublin has seen a constant rise in the last number of years, and yet at the same time, the number of students looking to come here to seek third level education has risen too. And so, what is a student to do when most of the solutions available are solutions like the expensive accommodation building behind me?
The situation for students is traditionally we have a culture of when students come up to Dublin, they typically live in a suburban house with other students. And that's partly for cultural reasons, as in where they're coming from far away, and particularly in rural areas to large cities, they will typically know somebody who already has accommodation in a house. And we don't have a tradition of purpose-built student accommodation in Ireland like you would in the UK, for example, or Belgium or Denmark. So students typically have had to come up and live in suburban accommodation, which is fine. And that has always worked out well, and it's always been quite affordable for students. The new mantra is to provide what's called purpose-built student accommodation, which are blocks of buildings with rooms, corridors and kitchens that are shared for students. And the theory was that this would take students out of normal residential accommodation and they would move into the purpose-built student accommodation. The problem, of course, has been that the purpose-built student accommodation is incredibly expensive. And the other problem then is that nobody is moving from your suburban housing into the student accommodation because it is so expensive. Who in the right mind would give up a €300 or €400 bedroom in a shared house to move into €1,100 or €1,200 purpose-built student accommodation, even if it is closer to college? The problems with high rents for students are, one obviously is affordability. A lot of students will choose then to live at home and commute, which is a strain, and also expense. People forget about the expense of having to commute, and I think that is a bit of an issue for a lot of students.
My name is Megan, I'm 22 and I'm studying journalism in TUD. I live in Dundalk. I have to travel to Dublin every day to go to college. The reason why I can't live in Dublin is because of the high rent prices. I did try last semester for 2 months and unfortunately it didn't work out. I ran out of money and I couldn't get a job. The commute takes it out of you. Like, I'm tired the whole time. I can't really do anything outside of college. If my friends ask me to meet up, I can't because I'm not home till 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening. And that also affects my college work because I'm not home, and then the last thing I want to do is take out a book or get out the laptop and start working. And then also annoying thing is that like if I have to get a book out of the library, I have to come the whole way up to Dublin. Or if I have to use the facilities in college, I have to get the bus up and use the computers in college because sometimes we don't have the software at home. If I did manage to survive up here on my own and get a job, I'd have to work a lot more hours than 20 a week. I'd have to be nearly doing a full-time job to be able to afford my food, my rent, and obviously I have to be able to treat myself. And like I wouldn't be able to do that here if I got a job, was paying the $400 a month, and then you'd have to think of your college work as well. It would affect it really badly. Like, I wouldn't get anything done.
One of the reasons it's expensive to live in Dublin, it's expensive to live in large urban cities in most countries. One of the reasons it's expensive in Dublin is because our population has expanded greatly and the amount of accommodation that we built hasn't kept pace with that. So we have far more people than we have accommodation to put them in, and you see that evidenced in things like overcrowding and higher rents. The solutions so far haven't really worked in that building still hasn't taken off to accommodate these people, and some of the solutions that have been proposed, like purpose-built student accommodation, is priced so high that it's out of the reach of most people to whom it was targeted in the first place. So the solutions haven't been good and so far haven't worked. So I can see it's going to remain expensive in Dublin for a long time to come.
My name is Emma and I'm from Denmark. I'm studying here in Dublin for a semester, and that's why I'm also living in Dublin. When I first had to look at student accommodation, I was so surprised of how expensive it is. I pay €1,100 a month to live here in this room, have my own bathroom, and then I share a kitchen with 5 other people. I can only afford to live here because I got some scholarships because I was going on exchange, or else I wouldn't be able to afford to live here at all. I would have to live somewhere else, maybe outside the city, or get a job here even. And that is even though I get paid by the Danish government €800 a month to study. When I think of what I'm paying to stay here, I don't feel like I get that much out of the money. I have like a small room. Of course I have my own bathroom, that's nice, but I still have a communal kitchen, so there is like a limit to the amount of privacy I have. Back in Denmark, I would be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Denmark's second biggest city. And that's a little unsettling to think about, that I pay so much for a room here and I could have my own place back home.
If we look at rates compared to different cities in Europe, we can find a similar room to Emma's room in Paris for €679 a month, in Amsterdam for €675 a month, in Berlin for €599 a month, and in London for €749 a month. All 4 cities, like Dublin, are the capitals of their countries. Dublin stands out at the highest rate out of them all.
What I've seen overseas, and I've been to university in both Belgium and the UK, is that the most affordable solutions are ones that are provided by the university at not necessarily a market rate, but a rate that students can afford. And there are also private sector suppliers of student accommodation who don't gouge the market that I've seen. And so it's possible not to have to charge twice as much as probably can be afforded by students in order to provide student accommodation. But when the government seem to kind of don't be willing to step in, this is what's going to happen.
Living in Dublin is proving to be just as difficult as commuting from home for students. But there is, as we have learned, a potential solution to that problem. And that solution comes in the form of universities providing affordable accommodation for students. The question is, however, will they provide that accommodation, or are they happy with the situation as it stands?